Welcome back. You're watching RidgeandFrost. We've got Andrew Griffith here, who is the Shadow Business and Trade Secretary, an awful lot of stories to talk to him about this morning, about worklessness, about all kinds of things, the budget. But I did just want to start on the news that we got overnight from New York. Zora Mandani, I mean, what a win it was. What do you think it tells us about what people are crying out for? And are there any lessons for the UK?
Look, I think we'll have to unpick that over time. I'm not an expert in US politics. You know, we've got the wonderful city of London, and I think, capital cities matter, and they do define a little bit how countries think about themselves. Clearly, there's something in there about the tone of politics, social media. You know, a lot of us just struggle with the right balance between sticking to the facts, acknowledging there's always a balance, and the easier sort of clickbaity, oversimplified arguments. Clearly, look, London's had its own socialist mayor for a long time. I'm not sure that's been hugely good. We've got a housing crisis here. Rents have gone up. The cost of living has gone up, and we've got a lot of issues with crime and policing.
It's interesting you were saying there about the kind of clickbaity, easy answers. Do you see that here then, perhaps with Reform and the Green Party? Are those the ones you kind of referencing there?
Look, there's a new generation of people in politics, who are more perhaps digitally native.
Yeah.
But there's also a piece, and you might get onto this with the budget, about trust. When trust or faith in mainstream politicians is eroded, then understandably people cast around and look for alternatives. Now, I don't think that's a good thing, but I think the way you fix that is not by changing the tone of the mainstream, but by restoring trust. We had some of our own mistakes in government, Sophie. I think if the Chancellor breaches trust on the absolute central plank of their promise, which wasn't to put up taxes, then that, again, erodes the level of trust in politics.
And do you think she should have to resign if she does that then?
I think that she should have to resign for lots of reasons, to be honest. I think fundamentally, if she puts up taxes, and we may all be just, it may just be pitch rolling and expectation management, but if she does, what it says, much more so than just the burden of tax, is that she's lost control of the economy. To control the economy, you've got to be able to control public spending. And Labour tried a little bit of welfare reform. They weren't able to deliver that. And so what putting up taxes, despite it being a central manifesto pledge, would say is, I can't do anything else. I can't execute a plan to control public spending.
I'm going to talk to you about welfare in a moment, but I just want to go back to something that you said a little earlier. You acknowledged mistakes that the Conservatives have made in government.
Yeah.
What do you think was your biggest mistake?
Oh, my goodness me. Everyone always asks this. So, look, I think ultimately we lost people's trust. Now, it was a tough time for
But why did you lose people's trust? It's
I
easy
don't
to say that,
think...
but what was the mistake? Was
Sophie,
it immigration? Was it the economy? What do you think?
Look, I don't think there was a single thing. And the COVID and having to lock down an economy and the damage that did to young people was something that incumbent...
You're not really talking... This is the whole thing that you can't really say you kind of acknowledge mistakes, but then you're just saying COVID, which is something that wasn't a mistake, it was something that happened to you.
In fairness, I said there are a number of things.
So give me one example.
COVID was clearly preeminent amongst that, and that's true of any incumbent.
You just have the biggest one, but what's the mistake you made?
Look, I mean, clearly, many people would say, and they said to me on the doorstep, the failure to stop the boats and control the level of immigration. Okay. Clearly, that was a contributing factor, amongst others, to why people felt that we weren't delivering what we promised.
Can we talk about the Charlie Mayfield report? Because this is really interesting. This is a big review that's been done into worklessness in the UK, and basically it's found that we are an outlier in the people who are claiming sickness benefit and the cost that that's having. And what's your response to that?
Well, it's a big report, and no doubt it will be a good piece of work. We've only seen the headlines, but Charlie is somebody who's been in and around government and done many of these reports. There's been an issue for a while, and it's amplified at the moment, about worklessness. I am worried about generation jobless. Young people finding it really hard to get into the workplace. We've got a debate in Parliament this afternoon about the Employment Rights Bill. I think that just goes in the wrong direction. I think we need to give employers more opportunity and reasons to hire young people, and that, without getting into the detail of it, will put up all sorts of barriers and create incentives for them not to take a chance when they're giving young people a job. And then there's a piece of this about welfare reform as well. I think most people who looked at this would acknowledge there is a spectrum from people with very profound conditions that we ought to support to those that are more at the anxious end of the spectrum, where actually being in the workforce, being around other people, getting the confidence that you can get through work is probably the best thing for them, rather than being left to moulder on their sofa.
So do you think that there's too many people with mental health issues who are off work who are claiming
Yeah,
benefits for
objectively,
that.
I mean, the key headline of Charlie Mayfield's report is the number's very, very large. It's 1 million young people, for starters, and that if we don't take action, all of us in politics, then this will continue to grow. So I think we do need to take action. Again, there's not just one thing, but there's an element of making it a little bit harder to get access to welfare for some cases, more for support for others, and definitely looking at the role of employers and making sure you don't have the unintended consequences of a really big red tape bill that says to them, we won't hire people.
Really interesting. And as you say, it is an important point as well, I think, about people who want to work. They may have additional needs or whatever, but they want to get jobs and they can't enter the workplace. I've had families contacting me about that as well. Always good to talk.
Thank you.